1998, Bobbi Jo O'Neal has had years of experience in forensic investigation, working in the Charleston County Coroner's office. Now she becomes the next Charleston County Coroner on January 5th. I speak exclusively with Bobbi Jo for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook.
Bobbi Jo O'Neal, welcome back to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
It is great to be with you. Thank you for having me again.
Oh, you're very welcome. Obviously, you are Charleston County Coroner-Elect, so congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Oh, you're very welcome. Who is Bobbi Jo O'Neal right now?
Well, I think I'm the same person I was before. I'm a person who loves the work I do. I love taking care of people, and that has not changed. And this is really a great time of a sort of reflection and transition. And so hopefully the same me will continue in the next position. So I think I'm the same person I was before.
What exactly are you reflecting on right now?
We've come a long way over the past 20 years that I've been in the office, and some amazing changes that we've grown really fast. The county's grown. Forensic science has changed, and just the technology has advanced. Some things we have stayed right with the times, and other things, this is really a great opportunity to sort of say, okay, what really is our mission? And, it's taking care of those who've died and their families and giving them the right answers. And is there a way for us to look to the future, and how do we want to be not just tomorrow, but 5 years from now? And so that's where the reflection comes from.
And how do you transition?
Wow. Well, I'm learning how to transition. I think for the most part, because I've been here so long and our team's been in place for a long time, most of that transition is going to be pretty smooth. But the past couple of weeks, first of all, we want to honor Coroner Wooten. She's done a great job. She is leaving us, and so we are reflecting on all that's changed under her leadership. And so we as a team and an office are trying to make sure that we do that in such a way to honor her the right way. So that's first that we've been trying to take care of. And then second, even though I've been here a long time, there's some things that I probably just don't know. And so I've been spending time visiting the other county offices, the budget office, the legal department, finance, procurement, just sort of face-to-face meetings. They know who I am, but this is sort of a good fresh start to just say, okay, let's get on the right foot. If there's something I'm not doing, please tell me. And to sort of just make sure everything is smooth as we can make it.
I was going to get to Rae Wooten at the end of the particular interview, but let me just jump right into it, because obviously you were talking with high school student Eli Wallace back on September 30th, if I'm not mistaken. And you described Rae Wooten as a coworker, a friend, and a mentor. How do you hope to be a friend and mentor to the staff when you become coroner?
Oh, and hopefully we've already been doing that. We've got a lot of sort of young investigators that we've raised up. Many of them started with us as interns. And so we've sort of taught them, on the way to go. And hopefully that just continues, because this is a specialty area that it's not one you can just read about in a book. You really can't just take a class. You really do need some mentorship. And so developing sort of the team that does that, that the top person is mentoring those right underneath them, and those individuals are mentoring them underneath them from a supervisor role, and that we just keep doing that. That's how we all learn and grow, is by having somebody who kind of helps us along. And so we want to keep doing that.
And then over your 20 years, how did you develop the team that you have in place right now?
Oh my gosh. Part of it is keeping our eyes open, for potential stars, if you will. And some of that happened with interns. We've had lots and lots of interns over the years, and not all interns, ended up here working full time. So when you have them in here, it gives you a chance to sort of see who they are as people, see what their gifts are, and then see where you have an opening that maybe they fit. They might not even realize that they have sort of a potential gift, and you sort of see it in them that maybe there's leadership, or there's really great investigative skills, or whatever it may be. So I think, first of all, just having your eyes open and aware that it's not about keeping the top job. It's about how do you grow up those who can continue to serve and do this real well. And so we've been doing that for a long time. It's probably been quiet. People don't know we're doing it. But most of the individuals in the office started as interns.
And how do you hope to continue to serve as coroner?
I want to continue doing what Coroner Wooten's been doing, and that's taking care of families and the person who died. I think at this point it's about figuring out how we expand some of our services because the population's increased. So there are, and again, forensic science is ever changing, and so we want to stay with the times. Part of that is having our investigators involved in national organizations, and they know what the research is and what's happening, so that we're just able to continue to better serve. I think I've had a great time during the election getting involved with some of the community organizations, so that's been a real plus. Sometimes we get caught in our world and the business of what we're doing, and so that was very good. So we're looking at actually putting together a little community service committee in our office and seeing how we can sort of schedule some things that we're involved with over the years.
Who are the stakeholders that you want to bring to the actual table?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Who are the stakeholders that you want to bring to the table as far as community service?
Oh, I think there's a couple different things we could do. I mean, one is those organizations that really impact the thing that coroners see. So whether it's our organizations that are impacting the opioid crisis, and how can we be a part of that to provide more education, more information about what we're really seeing. One organization is Wake Up Carolina, and they're providing Narcan to the community, and we can be a great resource with that because we see what happens when you don't have Narcan available. Suicide awareness and prevention with our veterans and getting involved more with the VA and providing them information. I think those are kind of stakeholders we want to bring together. But then I think there's also an interest just within the office. Everybody has sort of personal issues, and there are certain causes that are important to each individual in our office, and that maybe we are able to reach out to some of those, whatever those may be. I know there's a person in our office who postpartum depression, and those organizations are really important to them. And so maybe we want to pick one quarter, that's what we're doing, is focusing on that issue. So it's a combination of outside and then also inside concerns.
And you talk about Wake Up Carolina. I just love Nancy Shipman. She's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. She does some great work. And there's some great groups that are going right now trying to figure out how to bring prevention information and understanding what's actually going on to provide education. And the coroner's office is in a great place to be a part of that because we, unfortunately, we're at the end. At that point, there's nothing we can do for that individual, but there's a lot of that information about what their circumstances are that maybe we can figure out what didn't work. And to provide that information back to those who are able to help on the prevention side. So that's just one. I think there's lots and lots of opportunities out there for us to get more involved.
And I want to talk about that more in depth in just a few seconds. But you talked earlier about obviously helping to get those people in the office trained, but with national organizations to be basic. And you talk about the research and what's happening. What is that type of research and what's happening now?
Oh, the research is all over the place. I mean, one of the organizations we like to be involved with is the American Academy of Forensic Science. And that is where a lot of research comes out, whether it's DNA and how we can use DNA to solve crimes, whether it's, how we assess the injuries of someone. And for many, many years, forensic science was just, we sort of did the things the way we did them because they always did them that way. And it started to become more of a science where we started asking, well, why are we doing that? And is that really effective? And does that make sense? And does the science prove that that's effective? Because that's what's important in the courtroom. And so to make sure that everyone's up to date on that and that old science, what we thought was right, maybe isn't current today. And so in the forensic science world, there's everything going on, like I said, from chemistry, and blood spatter and fingerprints and how to determine when someone died. There's all kinds of research going on. It's really unlimited.
And you talk about the science that's really effective. What is that right now that your office is relying heavily on? Oh
my gosh. Well, we rely on that science all the time. It dictates how we do things. That also dictates what kind of standards are put in place. Mm-hmm. So, for example, there's a standard now of how many autopsies a forensic pathologist should do in a year. Well, the reason is because they realize that over a certain point, they become sort of ineffective because they're tired, they're exhausted, they can only do so many cases in a year. Wow. And so there's actually science about that where they researched it, and that's how they've come up with the numbers. Or is it what type of cases should be autopsied or not autopsied? And that's based on science and what the results have showed. I mean, COVID is showing that. Research is changing every day about what we should be doing, what the vaccines are. So research is really important.
Let me ask you a simplistic question, Bobbi Jo. How has COVID changed your Charleston County Coroner's office?
Oh, well, it definitely changes the way we protect ourselves. The amount of personal protective gear that's used. We ask different questions. We sort of ask a lot of the same questions, but we're specific about COVID symptoms and what someone's exposure has been, which we didn't do before. At the beginning of this pandemic, it really impacted our approach with families, which was really hard because we're sort of a touchy-feely office. We like to hold their hand and look them in the eye and give them a hug because they've lost somebody. And when you're having to distance in 6 feet and wear a mask, you're not able to provide that comfort. And so that has impacted us greatly, not only our investigators, but the way we are able to respond to families. So COVID's impacted us a lot in ways that people probably don't even realize.
And what else did you all do in the beginning of COVID that, you're still doing now or you didn't do before?
Well, some of those questions that we ask, things have gotten, we've learned a lot more as a country about what sort of symptoms to look for. On the front end, it was also advised that, no one with COVID should be autopsied. We still try not to do that, but there are circumstances where you may have to. And so making sure that we have all the protective gear in place, making sure that if somebody's not feeling well, we get them out of the office just like anywhere else. One thing we don't want to happen is for everybody in this office to be impacted because it shuts us down. And so we need to be just very careful about that.
And I know it was just, we talked about this in the last interview that I did with you, and I was looking at the hospital while I was talking to you because I'm right here at WSC right next door. But since that short period of time from March until right now, how many COVID cases have come to your office?
Well, I get that question all the time. And the truth is we don't have as many as people think, because most people who actually die from COVID are in a hospital because they have symptoms and they're struggling. And so if they die in a hospital, it's not necessarily reported to the coroner's office. So our numbers really from a COVID perspective are not that high. I think what we have noticed is we see the other effects of COVID, where we've had an increase in suicides, and partly because businesses are shut down and people don't have jobs. We've seen an increase in our drug overdoses, and that's because they're trying to cope and they're trying to deal with all of these additional things that are going on. Those numbers have gone up a lot. I think what we have also seen is deaths that have occurred at homes. They may not have had COVID, but they were afraid to go to the hospital. So they're having chest pain. They're afraid of getting COVID, so they stay home. Whereas if they had gone to get medical treatment, they may be alive today. And so can we say it's due to COVID? Well, it's not COVID itself. It's definitely the impact of it.
I want to go back again to your September 30th interview with Eli Wallace, and he asked you to describe what a coroner actually does. And one of the things you said to him was that it is a constitutional office. Let me ask you this, Bobbi Jo. How many coroners are there right now in South Carolina?
There's 46. There's one per county. So in every county, there's an elected coroner that is elected to serve in that county. So there's 46.
And out of those 46, how many coroners do you want to meet up with to learn more about the coroner's office?
Well, we actually get together on a frequent basis. So the South Carolina coroners have a South Carolina Coroners Association, and we get together on a frequent basis. We're also all in email chains, and so we're emailing about different topics all the time. Every year they have an annual conference with all of the coroners in the state, which is really a great thing because we can all learn from each other. We've got some new coroners coming in across the state that have never done this job before. So they need sort of some people to call to ask questions. And so some of us who've been around longer get a lot of those phone calls, but we all don't know everything. And so to be able to have a group of people that are in the same profession, are working under the same laws and their requirements, and to be able to sort of bounce ideas off is really important. And so we talk all frequently, quite actually. And
I know one of those people who are coming in right now will be Nadia Rutherford in Richland County.
That's correct. She's starting on January 5th as well. That's right.
Yeah. I hope to get her on Quintin's close up soon. That's one of my goals. But
very good.
Oh yes, ma'am. I know you talk obviously about the email chains that you all send to each other and the topics that you discuss. What is that big topic right now in the coroner's office and in the coroner's association?
Well, I mean, one thing we always work together as a whole is on emergency management. And I mean, obviously COVID is part of that topic right now. But how do we prepare as a state? And what do we do that if there's a big incident that's in Charleston County, how can we make a team approach where other investigators and coroners can come from other areas of the state to help each other out? That's one of the issues. Right now, we're also talking with DHEC a lot. They are changing the process on how we issue permits. They're called burial removal transit permits, on how we track when somebody has died, and they're changing that from a paper format to all electronic. So we're all learning how to use that new system. So those kinds of things. Some are actual technical, some are planning, and then sometimes we talk to each other one-on-one if they need case information or case help.
And with that permit, how long is that process?
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, as far as learning it, they sort of rolled it out just within the past month, and we're supposed to go live here in a couple of weeks. So we're all talking a lot, trying to figure that out and make sure there's as few glitches as possible.
Absolutely. And you also told Eli that the coroner's office speaks for the citizens and speak for the people who can no longer talk for themselves, obviously, meaning the dead. How do you speak to citizens now?
Oh, the same way I've been doing for 20 years. The first priority is for that person who died, that we answered all the questions. The main thing we need to do is stick with our mission. And the mission is to speak for that person who died and make sure we answer the question about their cause and manner of death. That's how we speak for them. And to make sure that that is done in a professional, compassionate, managed way. And then also giving that back to their families and answering their questions as best we can. That is really how we meet that mission.
I know also in the interview you said that we are actually the voice to determine how and why the folks or the person died.
Yeah.
How do you find their voice?
Yeah, we end up telling their story. And we tell their story by sort of the approach on how we learn about them. Their body tells us a lot about what happened. Their home may tell us a lot. Their car may tell us a lot. Their social media page may tell us things. And so we really have to sort of figure out what their story is and tell their truth and make sure that we have it right, and that they are not forgotten, and that we didn't just sort of brush past it. And so making sure that we do enough work to make sure the cause and manner of death is what we need to do. And
obviously the office covers the entire Charleston County,
Yeah.
Where exactly have you gotten the most calls from over the past year or so?
Oh my gosh, we're really all over the place. I'm not sure I can pinpoint. I mean, obviously we're in North Charleston a lot. Their numbers have been really, really high. As far as traffic fatalities, and we've had a lot of auto pedestrian accidents, and that tends to be sort of more in the county areas as opposed to some of the municipalities. But we are busy all the way as far north as McClellanville and up there to the county line, all the way down to Edisto. Unfortunately, we're all over.
All over. And I know you just talked about this, but the office is also responsible for any death that happens outside of a hospital setting, and you obviously are notified. What exactly are your responsibilities?
So when a death is, notified to us, regardless of where it's at, whether it's in a hospital, whether it's outside of the hospital, we're determining if it's our jurisdiction, and then what role we play and how much we need to get involved. So if someone dies at home, but they're a hospice patient and there's a nurse that's present with them, they've got a doctor that's been treating them, then really we just are getting basic demographic information and making sure that everything checks out. We want to make sure everything's fine. We'll double check the death certificate and release them to a funeral home. But if it's much more complicated than that, it's a gunshot wound of some kind, we're going to respond to that incident location, assess the person who died, photograph those injuries, make a determination on transporting them for autopsy or not, depending on what the circumstances are, speaking with their family. And again, learning as much about them as we can to try to piece that together, because we're going to determine cause of death and manner of death, which are two different things. And that's the main responsibilities of our office, and to ID them correctly, make sure they're the right person, and notifying their families.
And you talk about obviously the manner of death and obviously the causes of death. What are the ramifications for the families and the actual individual that is?
Well, I mean, there can be a lot of ramifications. I mean, one, someone could be charged for a crime or not charged for a crime. Family may or may not get insurance based on the coroner's ruling. If they are in an accident and the coroner does a really bad job of figuring that out and rules it a natural death, then the family doesn't get an accidental death insurance policy. So there can be a lot of ramifications for families. I think it also can be just how we interacted with them. You know, families remember how people approached them and how they spoke to them. And that can have long-term ramifications that have nothing to do with the cause of death or manner of death. And so we want to make sure we take care of them well.
Oh, absolutely. And I know you talked about obviously giving, I believe, the death certificates that is to the funeral home. What statistics are you looking at right now when you use death certificates?
I mean, how are the statistics work?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I mean, so the numbers that are on the death certificates are actually reported to the state and also to the national statistics. So anytime you see statistics that say X number of people die in a car accident or X number of people die from that, that comes from the death certificates that we've signed at the local level. And so if we don't get it right, not only did we impact the local level, but we impacted state and national statistics, which impacts where funding comes from. So Congress has a tendency to fund projects based on statistics. And so if we are providing them with really bad statistics, then they don't fund the right things. So not only can it affect the local level, but it can affect all the way to the national level as well.
This might be a tricky question, but how much money are you all using for preventative issues?
That's a really good question because we don't really have a line item that's specifically for prevention. I would say most of our things that we use are our own time, and I'm not sure that that's ever been quantified. And we've not actually given or donated funds, if you will, out of the county budget to those kind of things. It happens to be more time related, but it would be an interesting thing for us to track. Okay. Just to figure out, because that's where you learn where you need to increase or decrease is just from a time management. So it's a really good question. I don't have a good answer for you.
Okay, no worries. And you talked earlier about the budget, and I know this is a tricky question right now because COVID is still going on.
Yeah.
But what is something that you have to unfortunately take out of your budget, the things that you need to keep in that budget?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things that are just required by law. I mean, some of those autopsy expenses, toxicology expenses are required. The other thing is training. We are required to have certain amounts of training for all of the investigators as a state requirement. So some of those can't come out. You also obviously can't cut back on your expenses for PPE and safety measures, those kind of things. So where you end up sort of looking at is from a training perspective, for example, as opposed to, and there's no travel happening right now, but we would be looking at more online things that we could do, online training that doesn't require travel to try to cut down those expenses. Those are probably the big things right now, is just are the things that you don't have to have, and you can change the way that you do things.
And how much would that save your budget?
Boy, from a training standpoint, probably a couple thousand, I would guess. I'm just sort of guessing off the top of my head.
Yes, ma'am. And I know, obviously, you talked about Rae Wooten earlier, obviously outgoing as the Charleston County Coroner. And I want to know this too, Bobbi Jo. What's that one event that describes Rae Wooten as a coroner?
Oh, my gosh. I would say the Incident Mother Manual really showed who she is as just a great person. That night she went from family to family and greeted them and answered their questions, kept in contact with them, and then she attended all 9 funerals. And that's just sort of a representative of her. I think that's one of her sort of legacy moments. It was entirely for the county as a whole and the city of Charleston. But that was, long nights of no sleep for her, for the office as a whole. And that will probably forever be sort of the moment for her when she took care of Charleston.
And what will you miss most about your coworker and your friend and mentor?
Oh my goodness! Well, I will have her on speed dial, so she won't be gone, out of my life. I will be calling her frequently, I'm sure. Just her years of wisdom And being able to have her sitting sort of in the next room and sort of saying quickly, hey, what do you think? She's been doing this a long time. She has just a great heart for families, and just being reminded every day about that. And so I know when I get out of line, I just have to call her. She'll great.
Exactly right. And let me get back to the election. Obviously, that was a very interesting election this past summer and this past fall, obviously. What have you learned more about yourself that you didn't know before the election?
Wow. I realized I don't need as much sleep as I thought I did. It just was a really interesting time. And, I learned just a lot about the county. I learned a lot about politics, which I didn't know a lot about. I mean, I knew just enough to be dangerous, probably. And I learned to stay true to yourself. I learned that I just need to have my message and why I want to do this job and continue to do what I'm doing and to stick to that. And that worked just fine for me.
For you. And exactly what will you do on day one?
On day one, I think we're going to have a team meeting and sort of a good kickoff. And just, so this is sort of a fresh day, and not a whole lot will probably happen on the day one. We're going to transition smooth and keep operating the way we have been. And then I'm sure there's going to be some little changes. We'll have some personnel changes just because we'll have to with the transition. But I think day one is just a smooth transition and kickoff.
And day two, who will be your deputy coroner?
I've got somebody in mind, but I'll keep that a secret quite yet.
Okay. Well, Bobbi Jo O'Neal, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's great talking to you again.
Likewise.